Welcome back to 2x2. This is episode 5 and I'm your host Rohin Dharmakumar. This is a new podcast, so we're still figuring out how to pull off a new episode each week in a way that doesn't become formulaic. One way we normally do that is through fresh topics and guests. This time though, it's also a new studio.
Right. So we recorded this in the in-house studio of the offices of Capital Mind in Bangalore's HSR layout. Capital Mind is a SEBI-registered portfolio manager that manages over 2,000 crores of investment, and its founder is Deepak Shenoy, one of our guests for today's episode.
If you're interested in India's stock markets and are also online, then surely you've heard or read something interesting from Deepak along the way. He loves capital markets the way Praveen and I love business journalism, not even kidding. As it turns out, Capital Mind has a podcast studio that's way bigger and fancier than the one we have at the Kent. So, mildly envious but fully excited, we began recording with our fourth guest, Arnav Gupta. Remember I said we're a new podcast and are trying to do new things often? Well, the other side of that is that we're also trying to come up with rules and principles to follow so that we aren't reinventing the wheel with each episode and you don't feel that we're random. One of those rules was that we wouldn't reinvite a guest back for back-to-back episodes. We broke that rule today with Arnav, who's Director of Engineering at Jio Cinema. You also heard Arnav in the last episode.
We broke our rule and reinvited Arnav because of two things. Actually, three things. One, he used to work at Zomato and headed development for their consumer apps. Two, he no longer works there, so he can speak about Zomato freely. And three, Arnav speaks freely in general. It's really important for us to have guests on 2x2 who don't just have insights, but are also unafraid to state them explicitly on air.
Zomato is a listed company now, and its stock is, well, in a world of its own. That's where we were hoping Deepak's sharp skills and keen opinions as a public market investor come in.
But this isn't an episode about Zomato, Rohin.
That's correct. This is an episode about Swiggy and the options it has left now. For those who don't know, and this might be a small number of people, especially those who listen to this podcast, Swiggy has confidentially filed for an IPO. But which Swiggy? Is it the Swiggy that pioneered food delivery tech in India, forcing Zomato to copy it? Is it the Swiggy that popularized quick commerce in India with Instamart, with Dunzo, Blinkit and Zepto etc. following it? Is it the Swiggy whose product and operational chops were legendary in the Indian tech ecosystem, setting a standard for others? Or is it another Swiggy? A Swiggy whose valuation had once crossed that of Zomato in July 2022, but today is just around 40% of Zomato's. A Swiggy that is losing market share to its rivals in most categories. A Swiggy whose products are confusing and seemingly held together with duct tape. A Swiggy where there's virtually no senior leadership to be seen leading from the front. Which Swiggy is going for the IPO?
And this got us talking about what Swiggy should do differently now to set itself apart from Zomato. Because the truth is that the competition has actually vanished from the food delivery space. The original promise of faster and cheaper delivery is out of the window. And I mean, why should the players even care about this? It's a comfortable duopoly right now.
And duopolies are great places for a third or a fourth player to emerge. Will we see that? I think we already might be.
We recorded this episode just about a couple of weeks ago. And a few days after that, there was this tweet on X that announced a new food delivery startup that blew up everyone in Bangalore. It's a startup called Swish, and it promises to deliver food to you in 10 minutes. Only available in HSR layout, a locality in Bangalore. And there are no other details, by the way.
Of course, we don't know much about this startup and we don't know how it'll fare, but it's still worth asking, is Swiggy and perhaps even Zomato getting too comfortable with their duopoly? What does Swiggy really need to do? Is it to cause itself some discomfort and actually make some big moves in the market once it goes public?
Rohin and I talked to Arnav and Deepak, who gave us a truly insider look into the two axes of our matrix today. One, consumer apps, and second, the market. A quick disclaimer, both Rohin and I have been investors with Capital Mind for many years now. Of course, that has nothing to do with Deepak being on the show today because he's a capital markets expert in his own right. But it was important for you listeners to know.
Welcome again to 2x2, a weekly premium business podcast from the Ken, located at the intersection of curiosity and synthesis. We like to call it your own personal investigative brain. I'm your host, Rohin Dharmakumar, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Praveen Gopal Krishnan. Let's begin. We're at Capital Mind in HSR layout, which is a SEBI-registered portfolio manager. Thank you, Deepak, which manages over 2,000 crores of, currently 2,000 crores of wealth. And I have with me who you heard right now was Deepak Shenoy, the co-founder and CEO of Capital Mind. Deepak and I go back a long way. We're friends, and I call him part of my team when I and Sumant and Seema, my co-founders at the Ken, were plotting the inception of the Ken way back in 2016. We used to meet at this really shady restaurant in HSR called Nanda's. And that's where we used to plot. He was the founder of Capital Mind back then. Disclosure, both Praveen, who's on the show, and I are very small investors with Capital Mind. So just in case anyone thinks there's any conflicts of interest, it was very, 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 very small rounding error. But let's just say that we are just very humble journalists with very little money. We are very humble people. And welcome, Deepak, to episode 5.
Thanks so much, Rohin. And honestly, thanks for the humility. I'm also a small portfolio manager in this universe of large.
We are all humble. We are all humble. This is Bangalore. Joining me and Praveen as guest 4 is Arnav Gupta. Arnav is very interesting. He's an entrepreneur who sold his business. He ran an tech business. He's a tech evangelist. He's a developer. And very importantly, he used to run the consumer apps for Zomato. Am I right, Arnav?
Engineering and product. Yeah.
Engineering and product. Welcome, Arnav.
Thank you.
And I have my co-host, Praveen.
Yeah, I'm here as well. I just want to tell both you, Rohin, and Deepak that you are not the original members of Nanda. The original members of Nanda were me because the Myntra office used to be just 3 buildings away from Nanda's. So before the two of you went, it was the Myntra's product managers who would land up there and have their lemon chicken and beers. So you guys came much later.
Whatever bragging rights. All right, fine.
The only
You
person
were the
not
OG.
in a cotton sari. It was a very shady Adra restaurant. You have not missed anything.
They've
No,
renovated, by the way.
By the way,
They've
they're
renovated.
fancy now. So
Yeah,
no longer-
gentrified.
Yes.
All right, let's dive right in. Swiggy. It's a fantastic company. Swiggy is the archetypal Bangalore startup. It used to define innovation, product chops, and Bangalore cool. It pioneered food delivery at scale in 2014. It started out as a courier and logistics company, pivoted very quickly to food delivery. Because of those origins in logistics and courier, I would argue, and a lot of people agree, that Swiggy always was known as a company that had these real solid operational chops, right? Which many others didn't. It did things that others couldn't. It delivered products faster. It iterated faster. Zomato, of course, copied food delivery the very next year in 2015. I know, Arnav, I think you want to disagree with me, but let me just complete my point. In the early days, Zomato used to work with Grab and delivery since it was operationally complex to do what Swiggy was doing. In fact, just within a year of launching food delivery, Zomato actually shut operations in 4 of the 14 cities it operated: Lucknow, Kochi, Coimbatore, and Indore, because there wasn't enough demand. I know it sounds weird to even be saying that. Swiggy's product was considered the gold standard of both UX, user experience, and UI, user interface. Slick, intuitive, and whimsical. Zomato was always great at branding and advertising, but Swiggy, at least to me, was the undisputed king of product. In 2020, Swiggy was also the first to launch the quick commerce grocery business, which we all now know as either hyperlocal or 10-minute delivery, etc., which, Swiggy turned into Instamart. Its promise of 15 to 30-minute delivery was pioneering back then. And of course, others like Grofers, Dunzo, Zepto, etc. were in many senses copycats of a business model. I'm not arguing that Swiggy invented that model, right? Because that model has existed outside India, but it pioneered it. So this is an organization which was like creating business models, building great products. But, and there's always a but, right? Where we are today, the Swiggy of 2024, I'll argue, is but a shadow of its former self. Zomato copied food delivery from it. It bought Grofers, which copied quick commerce and dark stores from Swiggy. Goldman Sachs estimates that 56 to 57% of the food delivery market share today is with Zomato, which means Zomato is number one, Swiggy is number two, in a business that Swiggy had pioneered. In quick commerce too, Blinkit is estimated to have a 46% market share. Swiggy is again number two. Again, a business that it pioneered. There's a very famous saying attributable to Pablo Picasso that good artists copy and great artists steal. So perhaps Zomato is just a better artist because it's just stealing better. And this is not all, right? So in businesses that it started, Swiggy has essentially become number two to better copycats. There's product. This is where I want to kind of stop and just ask the three of you folks. First, what are your biases? Deepak, let me start with you. Let's talk food delivery. Where you order your food from?
Okay, I used to, unfortunately, I've been a very big orderer of both Zomato and Swiggy. And recently, I shifted to a model where we just get our food made by a cook, a chef who therefore serves like a few people in the office, because it's just healthier. It's more expensive, but it's guaranteed delivery. I know what I'm going to get, and it's different types of food every day, low carb, all that stuff.
Okay, and what about groceries?
So,
where do you order your groceries from?
Groceries are a combination of Zepto, Instamart.
That's number one for you?
Zepto, my wife likes it more than I do, and I get a better deal on Coke Zero on Instamart.
Wow.
So therefore I use that. Blinkit does not give me this deal. So because I order Coke Zero a lot, I order everything else in correspondence with it, so that because I'm ordering once and it just comes and all that.
All right.
So
Arnav, what about you? What do you use? What's your app preference for food ordering and groceries?
I mean, for somebody who has built the app, yeah. So, I am a very heavy user of Zomato, though I use Swiggy as well, like just to keep an eye on what's that app doing. And so back when I was actually building the Zomato app, I used to also order it from Swiggy once or twice a week just to keep a track of what all they're doing. So I think the behavior is still very same. But once in a while, sometimes when I have a bit of arguments with friends showing which one is better and all of that, I think the last 3-4 months I've done it twice already. I just literally ordered the same order from both the apps together just to prove a point, and both the times it was both cheaper and faster on Zomato. It just came home faster.
You mean Blinkit? Or you're talking about food delivery?
Food,
now?
just
Got
ordering.
And what about groceries?
So groceries, I think, don't really have much of a preference, but I do order Blinkit a lot because that's the fastest that I get.
Okay. All right.
There's a place very nearby, like the nearest dark store. I think a lot of people just do it whichever of the three is the nearest to them.
All right, Praveen, over to you.
So Rohin, actually, I live in Indiranagar, so I'm the ultimate hipster. So I cycle to work, I stay in a house in Indiranagar. So I don't use either Zomato or Swiggy. I walk to the local vegetable store and buy my vegetables most of the time.
Oh, you're an uncle.
I am one of those people now. It's crazy how Indiranagar hipsters are now becoming boomers. But anyway, what little I use for both food delivery and for groceries, I used to use Swiggy, but I have decisively shifted to both Zomato and Blinkit, except for Coke Zero. Just like Deepak, I am also a Coke Zero fan.
Wow, what is this universe of Coke Zero fans?
The new discovery is that Amazon is cheaper, but it's 1 day late. You get it 24 hours late. So now I've started to do planned Coke Zero deliveries because I know roughly my cycle.
It's so interesting what CEOs optimize their time for.
This is
demand prediction at an individual level.
At 11 p.m. in the night. Kidhar cheaper mil sakta hai types. It's like
all right. I paused at the Swiggy product. I want to turn to Arnav and ask you, Arnav, I know you have your biases, you just reveal them because you built Zomato's product, but how do you see Swiggy as a product? I have my points of view, I'll come to it last, right? But Where's the Swiggy product today?
So I think I would say from a very consumer interface perspective, like when you open the app and how you see the product from that perspective, the one edge that Zomato I think will always have is DP is a pain in the ass to like.
That's
it's like
Dipinder Goyal, the CEO of Zomato.
I'm saying it in a good way. Like, I mean,
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. We'll just splice that section. Okay, go on. So,
But what does that mean when you say that the good thing is that Dipinder is a pain in the ass? What does that mean?
Hi, we have an exciting announcement to make. If you're a regular listener, you would know that the Ken's podcasts have hit many milestones this year. From Daybreak crossing 1 million downloads to the launch of our first ever premium podcast, 2x2. We want to keep this momentum going. And for that, we are looking for talented people to join our team. We are looking for a podcast producer to help us produce great narrative-driven shows at the intersection of journalism and business. We're also looking for an audio journalist who has covered one or more business sectors, ideally careers or education or tech and startups for at least 2 years. If you fit the bill or if you know anybody who does, please check out the link in the show notes. And now, back to the episode.
So I think he's totally in love with the app himself, first of all, and he really gives a lot of attention to a lot of minute details, and he thinks of how an user who is trying to discover food, and you know, he thinks in terms of food a lot, and I think things like logistics, sales, these kind of things are not his strong points, and he has hired very good leaders at Zomato who actually look after those things. But he has always been the chief product officer of Zomato from day one, and he still is that. And I still remember, like, you know, one of the good things about that is that, you know, when you run a company that big, anybody can come up and think of improvements in the product. The easiest way to ship that at Zomato is just, you know, ping DP on the chat and say that, hey, I think the menu search can be better and we can search using keywords or something. And he'll be like, yeah, ship it. And next week it is out. And then similarly, like, you know, you go through a bunch of strategic meetings with, you know, 10 product managers and engineers, and you build a lot of things. And, you know, finally, the day before launch, DP will be like, hey, this looks like crap. And I don't think as an user, I'm going to like it. Right. But he is super opinionated about that product.
But my question was about the Swiggy app. When you look at the Swiggy app, what's the first thoughts that come to your mind?
I think it's just a mishmash of a lot of products. It does not feel like there are 5 tabs at the bottom and they are not made by the same team.
There are 6 actually. I just opened my phone right now while we are speaking. There are 6 tabs at the bottom.
I don't think it's made by the same team.
Instamart,
it just appears. When you click on it, it just changes.
Card, reorder.
Yeah.
Praveen.
Okay, so I have actually a very different point of view from Arnav.
Because you're also a product guy.
Yeah. So first is that I think a lot of people forget that Swiggy was quite innovative on the product side even before. And just like how Arnav is talking about Dipinder being so hands-on, I spoke to a very early product manager at Swiggy, and he basically told me that, do you know that the first company that did live order tracking in India was Swiggy? Nobody did live order tracking before Swiggy did.
This is like saying India invented chess and zero and all that.
No, it's true.
But what is it today?
No, but at that point in time, no, I'm just trying to draw the contrast between what Swiggy was before and what it is today. So at this point in time, it wasn't obvious that when you open and you order of some food, it would just stop. It would be like order confirmation done. It'll come to you. You'll get some updates when it's moving. But Swiggy was the first one that said, we have a rider, we have a person, we can put GPS on this person, we can give a live transmission back to the user, and the user can see it and not keep opening the app again and again. This was actually pushed by Sriharsha, according to the product manager that I spoke to. But today, it's a very different situation.
How do you describe it? How do you describe when you open the Swiggy app? Today, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind?
I think the first thought that comes to my mind is they have shipped their org chart.
What does that mean?
So when they ship their org chart, what this means is that sometimes when you open certain apps, you can see that the products there are not products that are, that make sense to the consumer, but they are actually like various divisions inside the company. Each of them have their dedicated real estate. So as an example, if you open, say, Tata Neu is very evident. You open Tata Neu home screen, you're like, they have shipped their org chart.
Vice
it's just a navbar with a lot of websites.
Tata Neu is like the worst kind where it's a nav bar with a lot of different websites.
Exactly. But that's also very similar to even Swiggy. Swiggy, if you open the home screen, forget the things below. You have you actually have the relative size of it is on the relative size of the importance of the departments inside Swiggy.
Oh, so how powerful you are within Swiggy determines how much real estate you get on the app.
Yes, and I can tell you the real estate by heart just without even looking at the app. Its food delivery is the largest. Instamart is also pretty big. The smaller ones are Minis, Genie, and I think Insanely Good used to be there. But it's now,
I don't know how many things they have shut down because Mini is not even there. There's Dine Out, Genie, Mall, Card. Dine Out appears twice. There's food.
The funniest part is like if you change tabs, the tab bar itself also changes. It feels like the app restarted when you change the tabs.
That's right. If you go into the food section, the app itself changes, right?
Yeah. I can go more into why this happens and what must have happened inside Swiggy to get there, but maybe I'll let Deepak.
So it's interesting that you guys are saying this because I'm a boomer in that
You're
sense.
not a boomer, you're a Gen X. I'm also a Gen X.
Well, I don't know what the thing is, but the oldest form of all of these things. So I'm such a guy that I don't even know that what is what. So here's the interesting thing about what I think this thing is. I will use an IRCTC to actually book a train ticket. Because despite all the UX and UI pains, if it does what I need, predictably, I will do it.
It's a monopoly.
Also, it helps that it's a monopoly.
ClearTrip, for instance, invented a better interface to IRCTC. But I figured that at some point, so for instance, I go to airline websites and book airline tickets. Mostly because many of the OTAs, although they may be cheaper and all that stuff, there are problems that happen in implementation. If you have to cancel, reschedule, you end up with a bunch of costs, etc. So the experience is lousy, not user experience from an interface point of view, but from an overall user point of view, right? So I don't particularly hate the interface of a Swiggy versus a Zomato. And till now, I didn't even realize what you guys were saying is true. I have to go and check. Because I order Instamart, I go to Dine Out, I go to the food delivery sections once in a while. And I kind of know it by heart now, what I have to do. But it never occurred to me that these actually feel or look different because I pretty much know exactly what I want to do when I go to those apps. I'm not browsing for fun. I'm going to order food and I want to select. I'm going to
How
go to
often has the app managed to convince you to look at something or order something that you weren't planning to buy?
The food very much more often than anything else. The Instamart very, very rarely because there I go. I hate shopping in general. And if you give me something with a tiny screen with tiny little images that have and so, 100 grams looks exactly the same as 200 grams. You lost me already at that point. And then I'm like, okay, dude, whatever. If I want this, does anybody want peanuts? Okay, we're going to buy peanuts now and we're done. So but this food thing gives you this ability to find new hotels. Oh, this looks interesting. Oh, I didn't know this is there. Because you're browsing for food. By the way, this is the exact activity I hate, which is why I moved to, because I was wasting
Ordering
20 minutes of my day.
Yeah.
This is like, so I've segregated my Netflix time into, I will watch a movie and I will just browse Netflix to find out what I want to watch in the future. Because that whole browsing process of Netflix takes 20 minutes. And that's all the time I have at that time to watch anything, right? So I segregate my time into, today I will just select and add to my list. Another day I'll go to my list. I will not look at anything else. I will just select
You're
what I
so
want to
methodical.
watch. No, because I have 20 minutes. I don't have the time to...
I just go to YouTube and watch trailers.
Okay, I should do that. But because of that, I hate this concept of just browsing through food anymore. So I'm like, just somebody figure this out for me and send me food. I will eat whatever you guys will
Okay.
send.
So what you're saying is very valuable from a consumer standpoint, because what you're actually saying is that, you know what, there are certain apps and websites that I use and I'm just habituated to them and I like them and I use them despite poor UI and poor UX. And great UI and great UX is not a measure of stickiness. And that is correct. Historically,
for me.
No, it's not just for you. It's for a lot of people. Like if you look at, say, the Amazon website. The Amazon website is well known for being extremely hideous. If you look at a bunch of Chinese shopping websites, they are known for extreme. If you try to open a Chinese shopping website in India, your head will explode because you're like, wow, there is so many things over here, but somehow it works. So all of that is correct. But the way how I look at product and the way how I see it is that the product that you see on the front end is a reflection of the organization and its priorities inside. And it sometimes gives you an insight. I'll give an example. So for example, Swiggy acquired this company called Super Daily sometime around 2018 or 2019, if I'm not wrong. They kept it running for like 2-3 years, which is doing some grocery stuff. Then they pivoted, or they relabeled it and called it Insanely Good. And they said that it's now called Insanely Good And then they did that last year. 1 year later, they said, oh, Insanely Good now is part of Instamart, right? So it is this kind of movement that you see tells you that something is happening inside this company. And I'll tell you what really is happening. What is probably happening is consumer companies, and Arnav will back me on this. I don't know if this happens in Zomato, but in most consumer companies.
Gold and Pro has happened a bunch of times.
Yes, but the difference here is that
very different.
How many times have they launched
all
it?
companies go through, or at least product companies, consumer product companies go through these periods of product sprawl where everything keeps getting added, everyone keeps spinning up new things, and everything it starts to look like this weird hydra with a head of a lion, tail of a tiger, etc. And then after some time, somebody comes and says, screw all of this nonsense, let's consolidate everything. And they start consolidating. So this cycle keeps happening. So the part that usually happens is whenever you see sprawl and the sprawl is not going away, it's usually because there isn't conviction inside the company. It's usually because somebody inside the company isn't putting their foot down and saying, I don't care that there are 10 people using Genie. I don't care. Like somebody will be coming and saying, oh, you know what? Actually, the reason why we should keep Genie running is because some of our analysis says that a cohort of users who use Genie are 10 times more likely to order food as well. So that is why we should keep it running, even if it does not have some
interesting
revenue.
point I want to make here. If you see the app today of Swiggy, you'll see there is a first level tab which says reorder.
Yes.
That's the funniest thing because think some ex-McKinsey VP of strategy
Yes.
there came
Yes.
to Sriharsha and said, Ki, you see 10% of our orders are people who order again. Let's put a
that is exactly
reorder
what
tab
it
at
says.
the top.
That is exactly what it says. So when this kind of things happen, you get that sense that conviction is not there in the company. I'll give a counter example. Okay, a counter example of a company that has extraordinarily high amount of conviction, but also go all in without doing product sprawl is actually Instagram. When Instagram started, it was a photo app. Then they did stories and like, we are doing stories. Everybody was very upset. How can you do stories? And like, we are doing stories. Then they said, we are doing reels and video. They're like, but Instagram is supposed to be a photo app and stories and now you're doing video also. You're becoming like TikTok. I hate it. Don't care. It is now video. So now if you open Instagram, reels is right there, front and center. That is conviction. The thing with conviction is that conviction is all the things that your product and your metrics cannot measure.
So, Praveen, I want to just come in. Like, I want to kind of segue this point that you're making to something which Arnav also said. So, let's go back to this concept that we discussed. We said, I think we broadly, at least three of us agree that the Swiggy app today is just a mishmash of tabs and offers and boxes with no defining character. As you said, Swiggy seems to be shipping its organizational chart, which means people in charge of business verticals are saying, I need a box, I need a tab. And who's more powerful in Swiggy or probably who brings more money to Swiggy gets more real estate, right? Let's start there. Now, I mean, if I have to kind of connect that, you said that organizations need conviction, right? So if in all organizations, there will be departments, there will be people who will make these demands on the app. Put mine on the homepage. Give me a bigger box, right? What is the filter or limiting function here? Who will say, no, you cannot? Like you said, organizations need to have conviction, right? Could it be, and this is where, Arnav, I think you said, right? Like Deepinder is a power user, right? And is he a filter of the Zomato app? That
There are two
if
things
something, and therefore, conversely, in Swiggy, are we seeing perhaps a vacuum of that role where nobody is saying no and everybody is just shipping stuff directly to the homepage and nobody's really in control?
Yeah, so I mean, I have built orgs a couple of times to now start see this pattern that at the middle of the pyramid becomes heavier than the top, then you do have a problem. And that does happen. Like you have a lot of VPs who can do a turf fight.
Hi, this is Rohin. This week, the free version of our podcast, the one you're listening to right now, is only 30 minutes long. The full version is over 70 minutes and available exclusively via the Ken's apps for our premium subscribers. We value you as a listener even if you don't want to subscribe to the Ken right now. So stay tuned for some really cool free subscriber upgrades landing in early September. You can also read a story version of this episode written by me on the Ken's website this Friday. We're also launching the weekly 2x2 newsletter. Sign up for free using the link in the show notes. See you next week.